afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Irene and Hyman Kreitman annual event. Ben-Gurion University of the Negev is deeply grateful to Irene and Hyman Kreitman for their unwavering support since BGU's inception. Their belief in higher education in the Negev led them to rally global support, and Hyman served as the chairman of BGU's Board of Governors. Over 3 decades, they contributed significantly to the university's growth, including the establishment of the Kreitman Plaza, school buildings, and the renowned Kreitman School of Advanced Graduate Studies. This school oversees doctoral students' academic and administrative needs, attracting exceptional talent worldwide. The Kreitman Foundation Fellowships further support outstanding doctoral students and postdoctoral scholars, fostering research and professional development. Their vision and generosity have empowered countless students and projects at BGU. It is our honor to remember Irene and Hyman Kreitman here today with this annual event. This year's topic for the Kreitman annual event is unfortunately quite timely. We'll be focused on anti-Semitism and what we can do about it. No small topic. So I'd like to invite Katharina von Schnurbein up to join me in the chairs. So I'll start by saying hi. I'm Joanne Moore. I'm an American Israeli and a member of the Board of Governors. I'm also an alum of the first Zin cohort, and there are several of my fellow Zins here with me today. We also have Chaim, who is the rector that I think most of you already know, but Chaim is also a world-renowned scholar when it comes to anti-Semitism. So we have a lot of great minds in this room, and I hope that we'll have an interesting discussion. It's an honor to be in conversation with Katharina von Schnurbein. Wow, there was no chance I was going to get through that even once correctly, sorry. Who is going to be receiving an honorary doctorate this evening from Ben-Gurion University. So congratulations, and thank you very much for being here with us. So Katharina is joining us from Brussels, where she serves as the European Commission Coordinator for Combating Anti-Semitism and the Fostering of Jewish Life. Now, each of you can say that 3 times. Just kidding. I can barely get it out once. So in this role, Katharina has been working closely with Jewish communities and organizations across Europe to propose and implement policy to address anti-Semitism, foster Jewish life, and ensure Holocaust remembrance. She belongs to the noble family of Schnurbein, is a political scientist and a Slavic scholar, and she is not Jewish. She is directly attached to a vice president of Ursula von der Leyen, who is the president of the European Commission, and to whom BGU granted an honorary doctorate degree 2 years ago. So welcome, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Joanna.
So in your current role as European Commission Coordinator for Combating Anti-Semitism and the Promotion of Jewish Life, you have a bird's eye view of what's happening in Europe today and the challenges being experienced by Jewish communities. Please tell us a bit about what you're seeing now and how things have changed since October 7th.
First of all, I would like to express how much I am pleased to be here with you and to be able to share a few of my thoughts on this very difficult topic on anti-Semitism. What an honor it is to receive this honorary doctorate. Actually, I have no clue how I get to this honor, but okay. And how inspiring it has been the last 2 days to spend with many of you, and also to see some of the wonderful work that BGU is doing. So thank you for the leadership, for all of you, for this incredible opportunity. So, thank you. I think that for Europe, certainly the Jews in Europe, but for many of us, just like for for Israelis and the people here, there will always be a before and after of October 7th. We have seen, and I think many of you are aware of this, on the day itself, an eruption of celebration of what Hamas did in some European cities on the streets. We then saw a few days after how the videos that Hamas filmed were spread online in an incredible speed, which created an atmosphere of hatred, and also in an unprecedented speed, an inversion of victim and perpetrator. And since we have seen attacks on Jews, on Jewish premises, Jewish cemeteries desecrated, Stars of David spray painted on houses where Jews live, swastikas on synagogues, situations that we in Europe hope to never see again. And that remind us really of the darkest period of European history and of the 30s before the Shoah. Yet, I think that the situation is very different today than it was in the 30s. And often these comparisons are made, but I think it's very important to see that for the first time, probably in the 2,000-year history of Jew hatred in Europe, we are at a point where the European Union and all its governments side with the Jewish people. And we not only have a strategy since 2021 that addresses anti-Semitism in the different forms and is very clear about all forms being equally pernicious, needing addressing. But we also have this positive approach as to fostering Jewish life. To tell you the truth, fostering Jewish life is in the heart of everything we do. So whether it is addressing anti-Semitism online or engaging in education, doing training for police forces, for prosecutors, establishing prosecutors that have specific profiles on anti-Semitism. Also Holocaust remembrance, developing new innovative projects with regards to how we can relate the atrocities that happened in the Shoah and the systematic approach of the Nazis to killing Jews, no matter how well integrated they were. That these aspects, all of those aspects together, have created a significant increase of awareness and action among government. I think the challenge we see is that this action that has led to member states having now their own national strategies on combating anti-Semitism and fostering Jewish life now need to be taken on by the wider society. And this is the challenge we see, that while governments have understood, and have also understood that anti-Semitism, yes, it's first and foremost directed towards Jews, and that in itself would be sufficient to address it, but that it is also a threat to democracy, to the way we live, to our values, and in the end also to security, because if we see calling for caliphate on European streets, well, it clearly is not a call from people that support free elections. So I think what is the challenge at the moment, and this is what we have seen also with all the demonstrations and what is happening on campuses, is that the wider society, and in particular bubbles in this society that are very vocal and very efficient in their communication have created quite a toxic environment at the moment. And so there are huge challenges, but I also see that we have certain structures put in place that can and will address these aspects.
Thank you. As we were talking about this about, I don't know, a month ago, one of the things that I think was interesting was also just to look at the United States and Israel. I actually live in Tel Aviv, but hopefully my accent gives away my Americanness. And I was actually in the US in April and was there for work. I do work with humanitarian assistance, so presumably all of my colleagues are humanitarians. And one of the probably most shocking professional experiences I've had was to walk into a room the day after the World Central Kitchen bombing and to have a colleague who's working on the Gaza response actually turn her back to me and made it very clear that I was not going to be a part of our discussion that day. So it's been very interesting how overt it is. The other thing that's been interesting for me is to see my niece and nephew who live in Manhattan, who identify as Jewish. My nephew Cash is 17 and he's very inquisitive. And so he always says, you know, Aunt Joanne, can I WhatsApp you any questions? I was, of course. So I got a question from him and it was early on, maybe at the end of October, beginning of November, and he said to me, how many Palestinians will need to be killed before Israel will feel vindicated? And I thought to myself, wow, that does not sound like my nephew Cash. So I asked him, I said, you know, I'm happy to answer the question, but, well, not that happy to answer the question, but could you explain to me where that question comes from? Is it your question? Is it a question you've, you know, seen on the internet? Is it something that your friends are talking about? And he said, oh, it's a question that's being discussed openly on social media. And so that didn't totally surprise me, knowing my nephew, but it was upsetting. So one of the things I wonder is, what do you see as the role of the internet and social media in the rise of anti-Semitism and then the explosion after October 7th?
I think that the internet has been for years the #1 entry door for anti-Semitism into our living rooms. And in recognition of this, even before the 7th of October, the European Union has worked and has put legislation in place over the past years, starting first from a voluntary code of conduct with the platforms, with already the threat that if they will not comply, we will legislate. And so we legislated in 2022 the so-called Digital Services Act, which has a clear framework, and the first framework, I believe, globally for a whole region as to how transparent platforms that want to operate in Europe have to be. They have to disclose their algorithms to the European Commission if they have more than 45 million users, and if they're below, the national authorities have to create the structures to analyze these algorithms. They have to create better redress mechanisms. They need to explain if they do not take down illegal content and hate speech, why they do not do this. And they have, and this I think is the most important of all, they have the obligation to analyze in how far their behavior, their business model poses a threat to democracy and to society, and how they want to remit this. And as a result, and this was one very concrete result of what we saw happening on the internet on October 7th with regards to the spread of terrorist content. We opened so-called infringement procedures, so legal proceedings against X, just 3-4 days after, because they did not abide by the rules. And since we have also opened procedures against TikTok, Meta, AliExpress, which is a Chinese platform, and several others, simply because we cannot allow that the internet is a space where we as users have got so used to having all this hatred left and right of in our feeds, that is poisonous to society, because we see this direct link between what's happening on the net and what's happening on the streets. And that has become even stronger after the 7th of October. And I think, had it not been for the internet, certainly the way also the different bubbles have connected. And again, I think the universities are, I don't think exemplary is the right word, but it's, it shows in the way this started in the US, it has reached Europe. Because we have hate speech laws, we can act in a slightly different way, but still, for Jews on campus, it's very difficult at the moment. And so we see a retraction of Jewish life, which is maybe for me the most frustrating, because as I said, fostering Jewish life is really what we want. And we have, if you read the strategy from the Hebrew way, so you open it the other way, then the first sentence is, Europe can only prosper if our Jewish community prospers too. And I think this is the essence of it all. There is a DNA of Jewish culture and life in Europe, which already was almost eradicated. And it is our duty and our responsibility to make sure that Jews can go about their lives in line with their cultural and religious traditions, just like anybody else. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think it's safe to say that decades of investment in Holocaust education and anti-Semitism education appear to have failed. Certainly the mantra of never again does not seem to have held. So what do you think that means going forward, and what strategies do you think we can or should employ to combat anti-Semitism?
Yes, I think this is definitely one of the challenges that we saw, also with regards to this dancing on the streets of the 7th of October, that the people that were there have gone through our education system. So that the instruments that we have developed, and there have been a lot of instruments developed and a lot of teaching material, and I think that also there are many organizations, including Yad Vashem, including the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, the US Holocaust Memorial Museum. There is a lot of very good material out there. But what is the challenge is that when you teach the facts, you need to teach to convey empathy. And that has not happened. And I know specific projects where empathy is the starting point. And then usually it works. For example, the Austrian Jewish Museum in 2015, they received a shoebox from a person that had gone on the Kindertransport to London. People in Austria came with this box to the museum, and they said, "We don't know. We found it, on the attic." And yeah, it seems to be from someone they identified as Jewish. And the museum started searching, and they found the person still alive in London, and gave her the shoebox, and she said, "Well, I give it back to you. Do something with it." And so in 2015, when there were a lot of Syrian refugees coming into Europe, they started projects with the Syrians, with Syrian children, youngsters, that came to Vienna, and they started with the question, so, if you could have taken something with you, what would you have liked to take with you? Because this shoebox was something that her parents had wanted to send to her, while they were then in the meantime deported and could not send this shoebox anymore. And obviously it's it's a project that reaches mainly the people in the room, but for them probably life-changing, because they will understand the connection. And then if you start from this aspect of also the migrant history of the Jews, and why, you know, after there are hardly any Jews in Europe that have lived more than 3-4 generations in one country. And all these aspects, I think that can really create a tremendous link and understanding, therefore, also. So it's just one aspect, one example, but I think that it's really, these are the future. We will have to invest a lot more into really training teachers that are capable of relaying the history of our continent, in particular the history of the Shoah, in this way.
We're close to time, but I see we have one question over here, so.
My name is Daniela Bailin, and together with Yossi Bailin, we are here to honor our great friend, Katharina von Schnurbein. We have known her for many years now, and I would like to mention just one of her many projects supporting the fight for anti-Semitism. 10 years ago, Yossi and myself initiated a project called the Preservation and Rehabilitation of Jewish Cemeteries in Eastern Europe, which after the Holocaust and the Soviet era were endangered, disappearing, and nobody in Eastern Europe locations where they were. And I'm not talking about the big cemeteries, I'm talking about small clusters and small cemeteries dispersed in Eastern Europe. Together with the European Union and Katharina's fervent and really persistent support, we were able to save 300 out of a few thousand Jewish cemeteries which were neglected, disappearing. This includes, of course, educational projects and awareness of the non-Jewish population in those locations. And it has become one of the most important Jewish projects in the last 10 years. But without the support of Katharina, we wouldn't have been able to do this amount of work. So if there is an example of how to fight anti-Semitism by showing that Eastern Europe was populated by Jews and it flourished by Jewish life. So really, Katharina, there is nobody more entitled to this title of doctor. I mean, a doctor is a doctor. Sometimes they ask you, oh, what kind of doctor are you? You are a doctor in the sense that you are helping our Jewish heritage to remain alive and to show that even anti-Semitism in its worst way will not erase that. So really, Katharina, thank you very, very much. We're very honored to be with you here. And again, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador for the EU. And
so, one final question and then one final comment.
Yesterday, the ICC, the prosecutor for the ICC, essentially drew a moral equivalence between Israel and Hamas. And my question is, to what extent do you think the prevalence of moral relativism in the West is contributing to anti-Semitism?
Okay, yeah. No, I think that this is what we are seeing across Europe, in a way, is a challenge towards democracies in the wider sense, and often a lack compass as well when it comes to these clear moral decisions. And I think it is for us as institutions to support those who in their actions actually will support democracy in, you know, with what they do. And we have to shield certain, for example, foreign influences that we also see coming in through the internet. We have put different measures already in place. You probably are aware that the European Union will have elections now for the European Parliament in June. And this will be essential for how Europe will then look and operate in the next 5 years. It comes also with a new European Commission, so let's say the executive arm of the European system, and we are here with clear words also to those who are willing to stand up and to make sure that our democracies remain strong, and the fight against anti-Semitism is definitely one of them. And if I can react to both interventions, I think one aspect there is, and this is what we have been really calling civil society also, and we are supporting this also financially significantly from the Commission, but to say all institutions, parties, universities, schools, trade unions, even churches, you know, all different kinds of civil society organizations need to have plans as to what happens if there is an anti-Semitic incident. By the way, also for other forms of hatred, but in this concrete case, anti-Semitism is not understood often so easily. We have the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition on it. It's very useful in these cases. But what we need is, we will know that there will be anti-Semitic. We know that there are anti-Semitic incidents. But the question is, how do the authorities and how do the institutions, the civil society organizations in which they happen, how do they react? And this has been the big problem with the universities, that these kind of let's say, fire drills, as you would need to have them, yeah, who is informed, who takes the decisions, which sort of reference is there, do we have the IRA definition in place, are people trained based on the IRA definition to react appropriately, and so on. And I think this is something that really needs to happen now. And the other aspect that we have found very useful is, in particular with regards to Holocaust education, is to show how local it happened. So the decisions of who went on the transports were taken locally. The bystanders, the people that did not act when their neighbors were deported, were there locally, yeah. And so I think that's why these projects that show local life of Jews in history, but also we are now developing a network of places where the Holocaust happened to support local initiatives that show these failures at the time, but also in an educative way. What does it mean if anti-Semitism is on the rise again today? What does it mean for me? How do I need to speak up? How do I have to react and take action when things happen in my vicinity and in my own circles? Because the usual reaction, in particular in politics, is, you know, you point to the other. So the right wing points to the Islamists, and the Islamists, they point to whoever, and the left then points to the right. Yeah, and this is, I think, something that needs to stop. We really need to address anti-Semitism when it happens in our own student unions, in our own parents' associations, in our work environment, and stand up and say something. And so also businesses, by the way, I forgot to mention, but also they need to have these plans of action in place.
Wow. So I think it's safe to say, growing up in the U.S. And growing up Jewish, that many Jews have asked themselves in their lifetime at different ages, what would I have done? And I think we all like to believe that we would stand up, and now maybe we'll find out what we're made of. But I don't think any of us take it for granted that someone who is not Jewish will stand up. And so I think it's incredibly impressive to see what you're doing on behalf of the European Commission and on behalf of all of us. So I'd really like to thank you so much. So I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon. Our next event is recognizing our loyal friends and supporters, which will start at 4:15 outside the Husidman Science Center for Youth. I hope that you'll all join us, and I'm guessing we'll be running a few minutes late, but hurry on out. So thank you very much.